My dear, you also want to go to the dance, right? But I can't go to the dance with this dress. Oh God, I must leave immediately. Cinderella. There lived a man who lived with his daughter since his wife died. He remarried to a woman who was very evil, who had two daughters who were unfortunately grumpy and stupid. The man's daughter, who is gentle and kind, does all the housework, is despised by her stepmother and ridiculed by her stepsisters. He cleaned the rooms and the stairs, washed the dishes, and mopped the floor, while her stepsisters asked to be served. She sleeps alone in the attic with a miserable straw bed. She had a habit of sitting by the fireplace at night, so they nicknamed her Cinderella. However, even though she was covered in ashes and dressed in tattered clothes, she was still graceful and one could see her kind heart. One day, the king's son announced that he would throw a lavish ball. Because of their family, Cinderella's stepsisters were invited to the party. They bought the most beautiful ribbons and the most luxurious lace. All they have to do is think about jewelry and hairdos at home. Cinderella, who has very good taste, gives advice to her stepsister sincerely. She ironed her dresses and ribbons. She even generously offered to style their hair. However, one morning, her evil stepsisters whispered to her in a sarcastic tone,
Don't you want to go to the ball and meet the prince?
"Ah, you are mocking me. I can't possibly come like this," Cinderella said earnestly while looking at her tattered dress.
You are right.
Exclaimed her stepsisters, laughing their heads off.
It's so strange to see a dirty maid come to the ball.
The day we have been waiting for has finally come. As night fell, Cinderella saw her stepsisters leaving in a horse-drawn carriage to the ball. When the carriage had just disappeared from her sight, she burst into tears. She was still crying when an affectionate hand touched her shoulder. "My dear, you also want to go to the dance, right?" said a gentle voice that was none other than the fairy godmother's. "How nice it would be if I could go," screamed Cinderella while crying again. "Okay, you will go. Go to the garden and pick the most beautiful pumpkin you can find." Cinderella did it and immediately came back with a big golden yellow pumpkin. "Perfect," said the fairy godmother. After removing the contents of the pumpkin so that only the skin was left, she touched it with her magic wand and instantly transformed it into a magnificent carriage. Then, she approached a mouse trap that contained secrets. Opening the trap, the fairy godmother turned the rats into 6 grey dot horses. While Cinderella admired the carriage with its gallant pair of horses, the fairy godmother started looking for a coachman. She approached the mousetrap and pulled out a large rat with a mustache. She turned him into a dashing coachman. Then she thought of finding servants and in an instant transformed the 6 lizards into handsome servants in brightly colored uniforms. "You are ready to go, my daughter," said the fairy godmother, looking at Cinderella with great affection. "But I can't go to dance with this dress," muttered the young girl while looking at her tattered clothes. "My goodness, how could I forget?" The good-natured fairy burst out laughing. In one stroke of her magic wand, She transformed Cinderella's tattered clothes into a magnificent gown, woven of gold and silver thread and adorned with precious jewels. Then she gave her a pair of gorgeous glass slippers for her tiny feet. "Now, off you go," said the good-natured fairy. "But please come back here before the 12 o'clock bells strike 12 times. Don't forget, if you stay any longer at the ball, the magic will wear off. The carriage will turn back into pumpkin, the horses into little rats, the coachman into a big rat, and the servants into little lizard. You will put your tattered clothes back on. I will be home before 12 o'clock," promised Cinderella, and she got into the horse-drawn carriage, which immediately drove her to the king's palace. When told that an unknown princess had come at the palace doors, the prince greeted her himself. Tuned by her beauty, he offered to take her by the hand, and the two entered the palace main chamber. Instantly, the atmosphere became silent. Everyone watched the unknown beautiful princess enter. "How beautiful she is," they muttered as she passed. "Have you ever seen such a beautiful dress?" they cried, admiring her dress decorated with jewels. Then the prince asked the princess to dance. Enthralled by the music, mesmerized by the light and the dancing, Cinderella kept talking until she heard the bell indicating 15 minutes to 12. She silently left the ball and disappeared in her carriage. Cinderella came home on time. The magic has disappeared. Cinderella thanked the fairy godmother and asked her to come back to the dance the next day. She had just stepped into her room when her stepsisters came home. "Are you girls having fun?" Cinderella asked politely.
Never had this fun.
Her stepsisters answered her.
If you come, you will surely admire a princess who is the most beautiful among other princesses. No one knows her, and she is so beautiful that the prince only looked at her alone.
The next day, thanks to her fairy godmother, she arrived at the ball even more magnificently dressed than before. Like previous day, the invited guests did not take their eyes off of her. She then danced with the prince until she heard the bells ringing 12 o'clock. "Oh God!" screamed Cinderella, panicked. "I must leave immediately." She ran up the main staircase of the palace and disappeared into the night. The prince couldn't help it, but he found one of the glass slippers which fell off when Cinderella ran up the stairs. Prince then kept it very carefully. Cinderella returned to her house in tattered clothes, without carriage, without a coachman, without servants, but the fairy godmother, who loved her, gave her the glass slipper as a keepsake. The next day, it was announced throughout the kingdom that the young girl who could wear the glass slipper would marry the prince. That same day, the king's trusted palace official went to every house to start trying on the glass slipper. Initially, the slipper were tried on by princesses, nobles, and high-class people in the kingdom. But because no one succeeded in wearing the slipper, the palace officials went to the house of Cinderella's stepsisters. The two stepsisters, whose faces red with pleasure, tried to get the slipper on their feet, but in vain. It came to a time when Cinderella, who had been watching from afar, volunteered with a smile. "I want to try it too." Her two stepsisters mocked her. The palace official, who recognized Cinderella as very beautiful, said, "Of course, miss, all the young girls in this kingdom should try it." Cinderella sat down to put the slipper on her feet, and wow, The shoes fit her feet perfectly. The two stepsisters were amazed, and the palace officials were very happy when Cinderella put on the glass slippers on both of her feet. Absolutely perfect, shouted the palace official, very happy. Suddenly, the fairy godmother appears. She dressed her in a gown so beautiful that no one had ever seen it in a single swing of a wand. Her stepsisters immediately recognized her as the princess they had seen at the ball and knelt down to Cinderella to apologize. Because Cinderella was generous, she forgave them sincerely. As for the prince, he was so in love with her that he married her a few days later. They lived happily, very happily, forever.